Hello and welcome to Indus News. Live from Islamabad, I'm Naila Shuja and these are the headlines. In India, the ongoing farmers' protest against controversial agriculture reforms has drawn international concern, citing the new farm laws are being described as death warrant. 36 British lawmakers have sought their country's intervention on the issue. Earlier, Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said his country supports the right to a peaceful protest by the farmers. Pakistan has once again urged India to ensure the safety of minorities and their places of worship. In a statement, the Foreign Office called on the international community to play its role in preserving Islamic heritage sites in India. The statement comes on the 28th anniversary of the demolition of the Babri Mosque in the Hindu zealots in India. The Foreign Minister of Saudi Arabia says Gulf states must be consulted before the U.S. revives the nuclear agreement with Iran. Speaking on the sidelines of a security conference in Bahrain, the minister said a sustainable deal can only be reached by consulting regional partners. U.S. President-elect Joe Biden has signaled a willingness to return to the Iran nuclear court if it shows compliance with the terms of the deal. Polling is underway in Venezuela's parliamentary elections that are expected to deliver President Nicolas Maduro's control over the country's legislature. His United States-backed rival Juan Guaido is leading a boycott of the vote, which he says is a fraud. Opposition parties have called for a referendum to counter the vote. United States deaths from the coronavirus have surpassed 280,000 with 14.5 million cases. The virus has claimed more than 140,000 lives in India, with a tally of infections crossing 9.6 million. Meanwhile, Pakistan has reported 58 deaths and over 3,300 cases overnight. The nation's death toll has risen to 8,361. The virus has claimed over 1.5 million lives across the world and infected 66 million. And in motorsports, Mick Schumacher has won the F2 title at the Bahrain ahead of the F1 debut next year. The son of the legendary Michael Schumacher will follow in his father's footsteps next season after securing a seat at Haas. For news and details, stay tuned. We'll be right back after a short break. Welcome back. In India, the ongoing farmers' protest against the controversial agriculture reforms has drawn international concern. The movement is posing yet another challenge to the fascist Indian regime.
Citing that the new farm laws are being described as death warrant, 36 British lawmakers have sought their country's intervention on the issue. They have written a letter to UK's Foreign Minister Dominic Raab calling for an urgent meeting to discuss the situation. The lawmakers said the matter is an issue of concern for Sikhs in the United Kingdom. Earlier this week, Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said his country will always be there to defend the right of peaceful protest. After Indian authorities used tear gas and water cannons to disperse peaceful demonstrators. Tens of thousands of farmers are protesting against reforms that they say could devastate crop prices and reduce their earnings. But the Indian government insists the reforms will benefit farmers, allowing them to market their produce and boost production through private investment. Several rounds of talks to achieve a breakthrough have remained unsuccessful.
It has been 28 years since a day a frenzied mob of Hindu extremists razed the ground at India's historic Babri Mosque in Ayodhya, Uttar Pradesh. The demolition triggered some of the deadliest religious riots. Over 2,000 people, mostly Muslims, were killed at the hands of Hindu zealots. More in this report.
According to records, the Babri Mosque was built when the first Mughal emperor Zahiruddin Babur was in power in 1528. But in 1949, idols of the Hindu deity Rama were placed inside the mosque in an attempt to make it a disputed territory. Over a decade on, 4 civil suits were filed in the court by both the Hindus and the Muslims for seeking possession of the site. A temple committee in 1984 was formed by Hindu groups to begin construction of a Hindu temple. 6 years later, the leader of Bharatiya Janata Party, L.K. Advani, led a nationwide campaign to build a temple in the place of the mosque. The fury generated by the RSS and the BJP eventually led to the tearing down of the historic building on the 6th of December 1992. In September 2020, a special court acquitted all the 32 surviving accused in the case, a verdict which was slammed by Pakistan as shameful. 28 years on, the atrocities let loose on that day continues unabated against Indian Muslims under the Hindu supremacist government of Narendra Modi. Pakistan has once again urged India to ensure the safety of minorities, especially Muslims, and their places of worship.
The United States says Kabul and the Taliban have started talks on the core agenda of intra-Afghan negotiations in Doha. In a series of tweets, envoy Zalmay Khalilzad said steps have been taken in recent days were positive and hopeful. Khalilzad urged both sides to accelerate peace efforts to end the country's long-running war. Meanwhile, the United States State Department welcomed the first meeting of the Afghan High Council for National Reconciliation. Earlier, Khalilzad met the head of the Taliban's political office, Mullah Bardar, at the head of the inter-Afghan negotiations, Sheikh Abdul Hakim. Spokesperson Naim Wardak said the release of the Taliban prisoners and removal of leaders from the blacklist was discussed. The Foreign Minister of Saudi Arabia says Gulf states must be consulted before the U.S. revives the nuclear agreement with Iran. Speaking on the sidelines of a security conference in Bahrain, the minister said a sustainable deal can only be reached by consulting regional partners. U.S. President-elect Joe Biden has signaled a willingness to return to the Iran nuclear accord if it shows compliance with the terms of the deal. The nuclear deal, formerly known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, was negotiated under the presidency of Barack Obama in 2015. But in 2018, incumbent President Donald Trump pulled out from the nuclear deal and imposed sanctions on Iran. Iraq has killed 6 ISIS militants in airstrike in northern Kirkuk province. The Iraqi military says the raid destroyed a hideout tunnel in the Sarjoun district. In 2017, Iraq declared victory over ISIS, which took a third of the country in 2014. But in recent months, suspected militants have stepped up attacks, particularly in the area between Kirkuk and Diyala provinces. United States President Donald Trump has once again claimed victory in the presidential election, alleging massive fraud. In his first rally appearance since the November 3rd election, Trump campaigned for 2 Republican senators in Valdosta, Georgia. Addressing the rally, Trump said he came to persuade Georgians to vote for Republican Senate candidates in a runoff election on the 5th of January. The election will determine which party controls the U.S. Senate. Trump repeated unsubstantiated claims of electoral fraud.
You must go vote and vote early, starting December 14th. You have to do it. They cheated and they rigged our presidential election, but we will still win it. We will still win it. We'll still win it. And they're going to try and rig this election, too.
Ahead of the rally, Trump pressed Georgia's governor to overturn election results and call for a special session of the state legislature. Moving on, U.S. deaths from the coronavirus have surpassed 280,000 with 14.5 million cases. The virus has claimed more than 140,000 lives in India, with a tally of infections crossing 9.6 million. The virus has claimed over 1.5 million lives across the world and infected 66 million people. More on this report.
The unprecedented surge of COVID-19 across the globe has brought the world's healthcare systems to their knees. Faced with a dire shortage of hospital beds, more states in the U.S. are imposing sweeping lockdowns. Down south in Latin America, deaths and infections are spiking in Brazil as the government refuses to impose any restrictions amid the second wave. While the US and the UK are set to start mass dispensation of vaccines this week, Russia has already begun immunizing its health workers.
I have not had coronavirus and I want to protect myself and my loved ones with whom I live. That's why I took this decision. I am the only medical worker in the family, so God forbid, to avoid bringing it home, I decided to get vaccinated.
The recent wave of restrictive measures across Europe has somewhat contained the spike in deaths, but most nations fear a third wave of the virus after the Christmas season ends. Further east, deaths and infections are on the rise again in Iran as people ignore precautions and take to markets during the winter vacation.
Every day we see that the national COVID-19 death toll is in the hundreds. This is simply too much. With the size of the population in our country, how can we accept such numbers of deaths? And the reason behind it is because people are not adhering to the rules.
Meanwhile, Japan and Australia are now set to ease restrictions on domestic travel after successfully containing the second wave.
In Pakistan, 58 people have died of COVID-19 in the past 24 hours, pushing the death toll to 8,361. The health ministry says more than 3,300 tested positive for the virus overnight. The ministry says there are more than 53,000 active coronavirus cases in the country. It said out of more than 416,000 countrywide cases, over 355,000 people have recovered. Officials said 182,000 cases have been detected in the province of Sindh, while the Punjab has reported nearly 123,000 cases. In the capital, Islamabad, some 32,000 infections have been recorded. Polling is underway in parliamentary elections that are expected to deliver President Nicolas Maduro control over the country's legislature. In a message to the public, Maduro said the time has come to vote for peace and the future of the country. His United States-backed rival Juan Guaido is leading a boycott of the polls, which he calls are a fraud. The opposition parties have called for a referendum to counter the vote. If President Maduro wins the election, his ruling Socialist Party will gain control of the 227-seat National Assembly, the only institution not in its hands. The United States and the European Union have expressed fear the contest will not be fair. The elections are being contested by almost 14,000 candidates from more than 100 parties. Britain and the European Union are resuming talks today in a last-ditch attempt to reach a post-Brexit trade deal. In a joint statement, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson and EU Chief Ursula von der Leyen called for further efforts to resolve serious differences. The long-running talks have experienced severe hindrance over issues of fisheries, level playing fields, and governance. Negotiating teams will reconvene in Brussels today, followed by discussion between the leaders on Monday. Despite significant differences, both sides remain optimistic about securing a trade deal of around $1 trillion per year.
Significant differences remain on the three critical issues: level playing field, governance, and fisheries. Both sides underline that no agreement is feasible if these issues are not solved. And whilst recognizing the seriousness of these differences, we agreed that a further effort should be undertaken by our negotiating teams to assess whether these issues can be resolved. We are therefore instructing our chief negotiators to reconvene tomorrow in Brussels, and I will speak again to Prime Minister Boris Johnson on Monday evening.
If a deal is not reached by December 31st, border checks and taxes will be introduced for goods traveling between UK and the EU. Moving on, Russia has slammed the United States' call for a moratorium on the construction of Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline. In a social media post, a Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson responded to remarks by the U.S. ambassador to Germany. Maria Zakharova said the United States has always given a response of political aggression to plans for the Russian pipeline. The Russian diplomat said Moscow has faced unlawful resistance from Washington on its projects for decades. Washington says the pipeline compromises European energy security. It's now time for a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Pakistan is observing the 49th martyrdom anniversary of 1971 war hero Major Shabir Sharif Shaheed. He embraced martyrdom after being hit directly by a tank shell on the 6th of December 1971. During the 1971 war, Major Shabir Sharif was commanding the 6th Frontier Force Regiment. He was ordered to capture high ground near Suleiman Key Headworks, defended by more than a company of the Assam Regiment. Sharif attacked and captured that terrain, killing 43 Indian soldiers and destroying 4 tanks. He and his men repulsed a counterattack by 2 enemy battalions. Due to his sacrifice, the government of Pakistan awarded him Nishan-e-Haider, the highest military gallantry award. In a tweet, the military spokesperson, Major General Babar Iftikhar, said Major Shabir Sharif was a symbol of valor and patriotism. In the United States, a fire has scorched a historic 19th century Middle Collegiate church in Lower Manhattan, New York. The fire department said 4 people were injured in the incident and a probe is underway. The blaze started in a 5-story vacant building next to the church. Built in 1892, the church is home to the oldest congregation of the Collegiate Churches of New York. It also houses New York's Liberty Bell. In a tweet, New York Mayor termed the incident heartbreaking and pledged to help rebuild the church. In Australia, authorities have asked residents of Happy Valley on Fraser Island to evacuate a bushfire expected to reach the town. The blaze caused by an illegal fire camp has scorched nearly half of the World Heritage listed island. In an interview, Queen's Island Emergency Services said there were 48 fires engulfing the island at present. Officials said 90 personnel, 38 vehicles, and 17 aircraft were battling to put out the fires. They said the intensity of the fires had lessened, but leaving immediately was the safest option for residents. Japan has retrieved a space probe from Australia's remote outback after a 6-year mission. The capsule from the unmanned Hayabusa 2 carries the first extensive samples of dust from an asteroid. It was flown by a helicopter from the outback to a domestic research facility of the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency. Scientists hope the samples may help reveal more about the origins of the planets. The Ryu asteroid is about 300 million kilometers away from the Earth. The Hayabusa 2 blasted off in December 2014 to collect samples in a pioneering mission. Pakistan has recently inked an agreement with a private British automobile firm for the manufacturing of electric buses. This will save up to $31 million worth of fuel expenses on the annual basis. More in this report by our correspondent Manahil Ahmed.
Pakistan's capital, Islamabad, will be the first city to have environment-friendly electric transport by next year. The draft of agreement was signed by Science and Technology Minister Fawad Chaudhry and the British firm CEO. The minister says a Swiss charging station company is expected to build a manufacturing plant in Pakistan.
We have at least 2 big electric bus manufacturers who are establishing manufacturing in Pakistan. Likewise, we have, the charging station company, Swiss charging station company, who has now shown interest to put up a manufacturing plant as far as EV chargers are concerned. So that will be another big industry, and I think these 2 will change Pakistan's future export market.
In the first phase, the British firm will manufacture electric buses for Pakistan, while in the second, more crucial phase, it will help the country in the production of vehicles locally. CEO of the automobile manufacturing firm Azam Khan said the company will also introduce 3 and 2 electric wheelers in the country.
We have come up with a project of electric buses, 3-wheelers and 2-wheelers. So we are starting with electric buses first, and we'll be having an assembly plant in Pakistan.
Director of the firm Saqib Noor said through their projects, they aim to achieve zero emissions.
Our slogan is zero emission, to attain the zero emission and social impact through bringing the ecosystem. And for that we have the e-mobility, the electric cars, and the e-housing as well. So we have but at the moment we are starting with Pakistan with the e-mobility.
The initial plan is to roll out 30 electric buses across Islamabad, hoping to make it the region's first city with all-electric public transport. In future, other cities like Lahore and Karachi will also welcome emission-free transport. Manahil Ahmed, Indus News, Islamabad.
A Chinese probe carrying samples from the lunar surface has successfully docked with a spacecraft orbiting the moon. More in this report.
In a first for a Chinese spacecraft, the ascender of the Chang'e 5 probe has successfully docked with the orbiter-returner combination on the lunar orbit. The samples collected from the moon have been transferred from the ascender to the returner. The mission has also completed the data collection task and sent all the data back to the Earth for analysis. It also completed a full-field multispectral scanning for the sampling site. So far, researchers have got some preliminary results based on the data sent back by Chang'e 5.
Chang'e 5 landed at the northeast of the Oceanus Procellarum on the near side of the moon. Based on the remote sensing images collected by Chang'e 1, Chang'e 2 and some foreign researchers, we can see the terrain there is quite flat, filled with basalts formed in lunar volcanic activities.
Chang'e 5 is one of the most complicated and challenging missions in Chinese aerospace history. It is also the world's first moon sample mission in more than 40 years. Next, the orbiter returner will separate from the ascender and wait for the right time to return to Earth.
China is receiving the country's first snow of the season. Ice-capped mountains have lured people out of their homes for sightseeing. More in this report.
As cold air pushed further south, many areas throughout China greeted their first snow of the winter season. It decorated beautiful landscapes with a frosty new look. The famous Mount Fanjing in southwest China's Guizhou province lured tourists who took pictures of the fresh layer of snow covering its steep cliffs and eye-catching peaks.
I come from South China's Guangzhou city, where we seldom see snow. It's worth coming to Mount Fanjing, as I see the first snow this winter today. This is the first stop of our 10-day self-driving tour. This place is nice, very beautiful.
Cold and rainy weather brought snow to East China's Jiangxi province, as Lushan Mountain, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, was also coated in thick frost. Thick frost also appeared at the nearby snow-covered Taiping Mountain in Wuning County. It attracted many tourists and photographers despite the freezing temperature.
It's time for a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. A Christmas tree has been lit outside the Church of Nativity in Bethlehem's Manger Squares, but due to the coronavirus restrictions, only a few people attended the traditional ceremony this year.
With a bright red star gleaming at its top, the giant tree was illuminated by hundreds of golden white bulbs as fireworks lit up the night sky. Just 12 months ago, Bethlehem town, which Christians believe to be the birthplace of Jesus, was celebrating its busiest festive season. But now it is shaping up for a dismal Christmas. Currently, the West Bank is under partial lockdown in a bid to minimize crowds for the festive season.
For sure, this year's Lighting the Tree celebration are not like before. This year, not many people attend for sure because of the coronavirus pandemic. Bethlehem is sad in this festive season. We had hoped that this year would be a better one compared to other, but unfortunately, due to the coronavirus pandemic, it has been a sad one.
All across Bethlehem, inns are closed, the shepherds are likely to be under lockdown, and restaurant tables are unoccupied with no tourists in sight.
In Brazil, a drive-through Christmas lights display has brightened up the holiday season ravaged by the coronavirus this year. More in this report.
All may not be calm in 2020, but some things are still bright this Christmas in Brazil. In the city of Sao Paulo, the Lumina Festival is bringing the spark of the season to locals who were otherwise stuck at home during the pandemic. Organizers installed elaborate Christmas decorations and glittering lights that can be viewed from the safety of a private car.
The idea was to have a moment of joy, a moment when people can safely leave their homes, to feel safe and enjoy moments within a family, with the love, peace and hope that Christmas gives, even if it is just for an hour or 40 minutes.
For those passing by for a glimpse of Christmas from their cars, the results are delightful but also bittersweet.
This is a great event. People were at home, thinking about what they can do, and to have an event like this, where you're safe, to not get out of the car is great.
Millions of Brazilians are preparing for a very different Christmas this year, with many cities also cancelling traditional New Year's Eve fireworks festivities.
In motorsports, Mick Schumacher finished out of the points, but it still clinched the Formula 2 title in Bahrain. The 21-year-old finished 18th and won the title by 14 points from Britain's Callum Ilott, who ended up 10th. It was his last race before moving up to Formula 1 with the United States-owned Haas team. The son of the legendary Michael Schumacher will follow in his father's footsteps next season after securing a seat at Haas. France's Sebastian Ogier has clinched the World Rally Championship title for the 7th time in 8 years at Monza. Ogier won the rally by nearly 14 seconds ahead of Hyundai's Ott Tänak, who finished in second, while Tänak finished 1.4 seconds ahead of Spanish teammate Dani Sordo. Toyota's teammate Eflin Evans crashed out on Saturday but returned for the final 3 stages of the Monza circuit. In the English Premier League, Crystal Palace returned to winning ways as they demolished West Brom 5-1 at the Hawthorns. Wilfred Zaha and Christian Benteke chipped in with 2 goals each, taking place to 11th on the table. In yesterday's encounters, Chelsea came from 1 goal behind to beat Leeds United 3-1. Chelsea, who started the day 3rd, are 1 point clear at the top. In another fixture, Manchester City beat Fulham 2-0 at home, while Manchester United staged yet another fight back to beat West Ham United and climb to the 4th in the table. And in cricket, Pakistan have announced an 18-member squad for their 2020 series against New Zealand. The 3-match series will begin on the 18th of December and end on the 22nd of December. The squad was finalized by head coach Misbah-ul Haq and captain Babar Azam in the consultation with Pakistan's Shaheen coach Ijaz Ahmed. Both Pakistan and Pakistan Shaheen squads are scheduled to depart for Queenstown on Tuesday. Pakistan have recalled Hussain Talat and Sarfaraz Ahmed in the only changes from the side that beat Zimbabwe 3-0 in November. Babar Azam will lead the green team, while Shadab Khan will serve as the vice captain. It's now time to take a look at the weather around the world. For the latest news updates, you can follow us on our social media at indus.news.